Excruciating. That's the word. Boy. When you have a week like you did, and by the way, I guess I should probably say welcome to Kevin's Corner. I am Kevin Bowen. He is Eddie Garrison. You have the week play out like the Colts did. A divisional loss down in Jacksonville, season series swept. Lose Anthony Richardson officially for the year. Grover Stewart out a month and a half. Boy, you get to Sunday, Eddie, and you're thinking, just have some good news. And I mean, there's so much you look at from Sunday, and it was one of the wilder Colts games I've ever seen. And 450 yards of total offense and 38 points and big play after big play and back and forth. And thought I saw the stat, the first game the NFL has had with 8 lead changes in 4 years. Just such a back and forth nature and an unexpected high-scoring game. And then it ends like that. It ends like that with P.J. Walker driving down the field, questionable officiating, and a lot to get to on today's Kevin's Corner, and such a big loss when you're talking about the AFC standings. And if your mind has shifted at all to more of a wild card point of view, that's where yesterday really stings. Eddie Garrison, good Monday morning to you, man.
Good Monday morning to you as well. How was your weekend overall?
It was good. Yeah, we did some fall-ish type activities. Carter Bowen, our nephew, hung out with us. My brother Ryan and his wife Kristen were on vacation, so fun spending some time with him, watch some football. And
did you go to the pumpkin patch or anything?
We did that back. Didn't we have the weekend in September where I said it was a pumpkin patch weekend?
Maybe.
You had to get it out of the way.
Maybe.
Then? Yeah.
Maybe.
That was the pumpkin patch time. No pumpkin patch activities for us. I mean, you had Ohio State, Penn State at noon. So you got to look at the schedule, folks. You got to get the pumpkin patch out. There's always going to be that late September game or weekend, I should say, where college football really lacks. Make sure you get that in. And then yesterday, man, gosh, what a wild game. Just
extremely
a wild game. I mean, haymakers thrown between the Colts and the Browns. Like, Myles Garrett, one of the greatest individual performances I've ever seen inside of Lucas Oil Stadium. And I guess I'll focus here early on before I get into what I didn't like and what I liked, Eddie. And just the magnitude of that loss in terms of the playoffs. And I know there's a section of our audience that maybe isn't ready to go there or, doesn't want to go there. But we talked about it on the Wednesday pod. Like last Sunday in Jacksonville was such a divisional implication-filled game. Yesterday, I would say, was close to that from a wild card standpoint. 3 of your next 4, Eddie, are against NFC teams. So those games just naturally don't bring as much to the table AFC playoff-wise. They still are obviously important, but they're not kind of the double whammy nature that yesterday is and was. And boy, to have lost it like that, you fall from 8th in the playoff standings to 11th. You obviously lose a head-to-head tiebreaker against a team that I think is in a wild quarterback situation. I don't know what the hell they do at quarterback right now. God, that was brutal. In a way, it almost kind of felt like the opposite of Baltimore. Dustin Hopkins did his Matt Gay performance from Baltimore, and I thought as beneficial as the whistle was late in the Baltimore game, you didn't obviously get that late yesterday. Should we talk about the officiating now?
Just get it out of the way.
How do you want to handle it? I'm bad with officiating stuff. I'm not a big blame the ref guy. Are you a blame the ref guy?
Depends on the situation. Like yesterday, I don't blame the ref as much as you really could because of how I thought it was a little bit ticky-tack on the illegal contact. And then I tweeted this a week ago, yesterday. I feel like the part of pass interference that needs to be reinstated to these officials is that it has to be catchable. I've seen so many balls now at pass attempts land 7 yards out of bounds. Right. Like, how in the hell is Victor Wembanyama going to catch that, let alone a guy who's 2.5 feet shorter?
I think we get Wembanyama on the bingo card early in the pod. All right, let's just go there. Let's go with each of the plays, Eddie. Let's start. I guess let's go in order. 3rd and 4, legal contact by Darrell Baker Jr. on Amari Cooper. That negates the E.J. Speed game-sealing strip recovered by DeForest Buckner on that play. This is how I view it. And again, my hand is raised as like I am not blame the ref guy. And so I think that kind of influences. I don't know why I feel the need to state that, But I will state that heads up because I do feel like you can kind of fall into one of the two categories with that. So on the play, Cooper is running a double move. And I think the Browns had a very clear game plan on the final drive. Pepper Darrell Baker Jr. And so part of that is, and you hope, Juju Brents isn't out too long. Best case scenario would be probably right around a month, get him back for some part to close that season, maybe post bye week, things like that. But clearly they're saying, hey, let's pepper him. He got benched already this season. He's back in the game right now. Let's make sure that we go after him. And they did. They went after him all on that final drive. So Cooper runs a double move. And I've watched this play now, Eddie. I swear I've watched it 35 times. And I've slowed it down, and I tried to screenshot. I've tried to do everything with this. Because to me, this is the debatable one. The second play is not debatable. That flag should have been picked up, to your point. It's uncatchable. The ball almost hit Blue. It almost hit James the Beer Man. It was so far out of play. The officiating crew's got to come together
and mention
pick that up.
Peoples-Jones initiates the contact there. It's not Baker.
Yeah, and well, let's focus on 3rd and 4. That's on me for getting off track there. So what you see on the double move is Baker bites on the initial move. That is clear. And you watch it, and he starts to stumble a little bit as he sees Cooper start to reroute himself back to whatever, the outside part of the field or even kind of that corner of the end zone. And as Baker realizes, oh bleep, Cooper is doing something else here, he sticks out the left arm. And for me, when that left arm goes out, that is the first thing that makes contact with Cooper. And at that point, that is Darrell Baker Jr. realizing he is beat. To recover, I've got to get out of whatever my normal guarding position is, and I've got to get my left arm on him to try and impede his progress. At that point, Cooper tries to kind of disengage that left arm, and pretty simultaneously to that happening, you have then Baker kind of wrap around Cooper with his right and get that on the backside of him. And while all this is happening, EJ Speed is in the backfield, trying to end the game. I have not seen a great all-22 shot of it yet, Eddie. Usually that tape comes out a little bit later on Mondays. I've tried to kind of, look at a screen grab from the fumble, try to match it up with, CBS did have that one kind of end zone shot looking down towards Walker, and you can see Baker and Cooper in the background. It is very split second. I think the infraction occurs just prior to the ball coming out. It is very close, though. But that is a big deal because if the ball's out, anything goes. And that would not be illegal contact. If Philip Walker would have been out of the pocket, that illegal contact goes out the window either. So it is very bang-bang, and it is very close. And I think anybody that falls on that is 1,000% a penalty or 1,000% not a penalty, I think you're just looking at it through whatever glasses you want to look at it. I think it's really bang-bang. I probably think it's illegal contact. Again, I'm not married to the call, but I think that Baker's left arm does impede the reroute. And at the end of the day, and this is strictly my opinion, it's a double move by Amari Cooper that Darrell Baker gets beat on. And to recover, he does something to stick out his left arm, and that starts all of the contact there. Obviously a huge penalty, comes on a 3rd and 4, automatic first down, an incompletion there, that would have been great for the Browns. Honestly, just EJ Speed sacking Philip Walker would have been a huge play had the penalty not occurred on that. And then the defensive pass interference penalty on the very next play. That, to me, Eddie, is a moment where I'm looking at the officials right here. Sean Smith and his crew. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They had an Indy guy on the crew yesterday.
Did they really?
An Indy native on the crew. Yeah. So for those thinking, these refs, they screwed us. Well, do we ban the Indy guy? Do we kick him out of the city? 8 guys on the officiating crew, right? Referee, line judge, back judge, umpire, field judge, replay official. I guess the replay official is up top. Down judge and side judge. Okay. So you got 7 guys on the crew. How do you not come together? How does one person in that crew not come together and say, guys, and probably the head official, Sean Smith, is the one, because when Philip Walker releases the ball, what do you do if you're the head official? You wait in the backfield for a split second to see if there's any sort of contact to the quarterback at that point. And then you should follow, in my opinion, you should follow the ball down the field to see where it lands, because that, who would that have been on the call? Probably the back judge, maybe the side judge who threw the flag on Baker Jr. They're watching Baker Jr. versus Donovan Peoples-Jones. They're not watching where the ball necessarily lands. Once that ball lands where it did, that's where, again, this crew picked up flags yesterday. They did it twice. Get together as a crew and pick that up. That, to me, is the obvious one. I'm a little torn on the first one. I lean towards it was illegal contact. This one, I have no lean. This is an uncatchable ball. It is not pass interference. Honestly, Eddie, if it's anything, it's probably holding more than pass interference, right? I mean, didn't Baker Jr. have a good amount of Peoples-Jones' arm, if you want to call anything there? Again, I'm not saying that you do, but if you want to call anything, to me it's holding and not DPI.
But like I said before we started talking about that, I'm watching it right now. Peoples-Jones is the one that engages with Baker. Baker doesn't engage with Peoples-Jones. Peoples-Jones sticks that right arm out into the chest to try and create a little bit of separation and as he's going toward the back of the end zone. But, I mean, Baker doesn't release. So, yeah, I mean, you could call holding, but I just didn't think that Baker was the one that engaged first in that scenario.
If you want to have a gripe, I think this is the gripe. That creates a second and goal from the 9. I mean, who the hell knows? I looked at my child before the drive started, and I go, there's no way P.J. Walker does this, right? No way. I mean, like, Eddie, who was worse, Watson or Walker?
Oh,
probably Watson.
Yeah,
but I mean, they both were god awful, and that's what adds to the maddening. And we'll get into that a little bit more as the podcast unfolds. Part of this is living with youth in the secondary. I mean, that is part of this. I think there are a dozen other moments in the game, and Eddie, that's what I really try to focus on with this podcast. I think so often we get beyond focused on what happens in the final minute or two, and we lose sight of what happens elsewhere in the game, and there are so many critical moments. So I really try to be just 60-minute reactionary to what happened in that football game. And there were plenty of chances that the Colts obviously had. And did they get a poor whistle late? I would say undoubtedly they got a poor whistle late. But they also had ample opportunities to try and end this game and put themselves in that situation to needing a steady whistle, if you will, late, or a good whistle late, however you want to describe it, based off some decisions that they made throughout the course of that game. But that's how it boils down to me. I can, ticky-tack, is that what you called the 3rd and 4 legal contact?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. Again, to me, Amari Cooper has Baker Jr. beat, and that's where the left arm goes out. I know there's a lot of Cooper then, initiated the contact. To me, when Baker Jr. throws out the left arm, if you go back and watch it, he's off balance and he is beat, and that's what he does to try to recover. So that's how I view that situation.
Want to get your thoughts on a couple or 2 plays in particular before we go into more what you didn't like. The DeForest Buckner interception, no interception, and the Kenny Moore, no interception. I thought Kenny's was more of an incompletion than Buckner's. I couldn't really get a good angle on it. What'd you think about the Buckner pick that they overturned without really going under the hood, for lack of a better phrasing?
I kind of thought that the NFL had done this where if the ball doesn't move, then you can still secure the catch if the ball technically hits the ground. Was I off on that?
Correct. You're right.
I thought the Kenny Moore one was harder to overrule than the Buckner one.
I thought there was a view where you could see the ball come loose, it hits the ground, and he doesn't have possession
for
of
Kenny?
Yes, when he doesn't have the full possession of the ball.
Yeah, again, very bang, both of those. I think it's fair to say the Colts got a questionable whistle yesterday to a bad whistle. And those moments, boy, I mean, as soon as the Kenny Moore one happened, I'm thinking to myself, I see Watson laying there on the turf. I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, this is the best thing that could happen to the Browns. Get Watson out of the game. But, yeah, let's get into what I didn't like.
Okay, the first one, the final drive.
Yeah, let's just start with the final drive, and we're going to put the officiating to the side because we've already talked about that. Eddie Phillip Walker drove, 7 plays and 67 yards until the officiating rose up. You can't lose sight of that. This is a guy that woke up Sunday morning, didn't think he was going to start, a guy that did not take reps in practice on Thursday or Friday, a guy that wasn't on the Browns roster just 3 weeks ago. All of that is what adds to the sting of that drive, whether it was the 3rd and 10 to Elijah Moore. Right after that play, Eddie, the Browns get to the line of scrimmage, and it's 2:19 on the clock. What is the new trend in the NFL, and I would say in college football even, right before the 2-minute warning? When teams go hurry up, they run it right before the 2-minute warning. They know they get the clock stoppage. So they look at it as the one time to catch you off guard. Pierre Strong, their third-string running back. So on that drive, it was third-string quarterback and third-string running back for the bulk of it. He runs for, what was it? Was it 13 yards? And that is a huge play to get them now into, like, that to me, Eddie, got them into the situation where clock isn't going to matter for them. Like, that put them at the 37-yard line there at that point. And I felt like even with just, what did they have?
13 yards.
Okay, did they have one timeout at that point? I'm trying to think if they had already burned their...
They had one timeout left.
The third one. Yeah, so they still had one timeout left. But that play right there gets to the 37-yard line with 2 minutes to go. I mean, for the most part, they didn't need a spike. They didn't need to do anything kind of the rest of the way with that drive. So I thought that was a big play. And then 2 plays later, Eddie, how wide open was Donovan Peoples-Jones right over the middle of the field? Right over the middle of the field. I mean, he was wide open. And those 3 plays, to give credit to P.J. Walker, that was a pretty darn good throw and catch to Elijah Moore down the sidelines. That play, the 13-yard run by Strong, and then the 19-yarder to Peoples-Jones over the middle of the field. Those are 3 big plays on that drive that kept Cleveland away from the 4th down or another 3rd and long. You never really got them into another 3rd and long. Even the 3rd and 4, when the chaos ensued with the speed penalty and all of that still is not a long distance there. So that was just such a poor drive by this defense in that moment, considering the quarterback you were playing, the lack of personnel around him at that point of the game. And this is what we've seen from this defense. Eddie, we have seen from this defense moments to end games, slam the door shut, make the big time. I mean, what did Cleveland do? Cleveland slammed it shut on that final drive of the game. But I go back to the Eagles and Commanders game from last year, and I look at this one. Hell, you could even look at the Rams game. I know it wasn't the exact same situation because you didn't have a lead necessarily, but I just feel like it's missing from your D-line. And in particular, it's missing from Kwity Paye. It's missing from Samson Ebukam. I think those 2 combined for maybe 1 hit yesterday. I mean, that's a matchup where, Kwity is probably the one. Kwity gets a rookie right tackle. He gets a day 3 rookie tackle. And did he have a quarterback hit? Did he have a sack? Did he have a hurry? I'm asking that. I don't remember any of those moments here as I try to scramble through the old box score to see what. I'm just judging by what it felt like up top with Kwity yesterday. Those are those moments where your closers have got to deliver for you, and they get drafted to be that. Yeah, no quarterback hit or sack from Kwity yesterday. Ebukam had, 1 quarterback hit I'm seeing here. You need more. You need more from your closers in those moments, and you did not get that on that drive. 7 plays, 67 yards until the chaos ensued there. So I did not like how your defense had the opportunity to close it. I mean, if you would have told Shane Steichen at the start of the day, hey, man, you're going to get Phillip Walker needing to score a touchdown with 2:30 to go, and he's got to drive 80 yards, and at that point of the game, he's been, 5 for 15 or whatever the hell he was leading in that drive.
Hell yeah. Sign me up.
Where do you sign up? And you couldn't close it. And, if you want to look to your linebacker, Shaq Leonard, this is now 7 straight games, Eddie, without a pick, a forced fumble, or a fumble recovery. It's the longest stretch of his career. Yeah.
Something I want to add in here, Kevin. Something that we talked about after the Jacksonville loss in Jacksonville, where the defense came on after the quick change on the turnover, they continue to struggle in that category. Whenever the Colts offensively make a turnover, they have given up 50 points on the defense. They have forced 3 punts, a missed field goal, 1 turnover on downs, and 1 fumble off of those turnovers. And 3 of those turnovers ended the half or the game. So that in terms of the defense, when they have to come on the field after a turnover by the offense, they haven't been good either.
Yeah, I thought they were good at one sudden change moment. I'm trying to think of what it was. I mean, they were dealt a ugly hand, but going back to the Jacksonville game, obviously very poor in the sudden change right there after the Bernard Ryman strip sack. And I think it's fair to expect more out of your defense when you're facing a quarterback of that stature, if you will, of P.J. Walker at that point of the game, particularly from your front seven. You know, testing the secondary is one thing, but your front seven gets paid the big bucks, and you drafted them high and you paid them big money to deliver, and they did not in that moment.
Now the second thing you did not like was Shane's game management.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we separate two things, Eddie.
I agree with you in this regard too, by the way.
Shane Steichen wears 2 really, really important hats on game day. He wears a hat as the head coach and the game manager for the Colts, and he wears a hat as the offensive play caller for the Colts. Those are 2 really, really important things. And honestly, they probably at times have a little bit different objectives. The play caller for a team might differ from what the head coach thinks is necessary given this time and distance. You know, if you're a defensive play caller and an offensive play caller, you can get bottled up into what your own unit is specifically doing and maybe lose sight of the full game in general. We will get to what I liked here in a little bit. And just to tease it, what Shane Steichen did as an offensive play caller, I loved for so much of Sunday. I mean, 450 yards, 38 points. I mean,
there were some things that I didn't like that I'll touch on here in a second.
Astonishing to me. But if you put on the game manager hat, I thought the first half was absolutely awful from Shane Steichen. Let's go over these 2 situations here, okay? You get sacked just after the 2-minute warning that forces a 2nd and 15 from your own 6-yard line. There's a 1:50 to go in the first half. Cleveland had just taken a timeout. So what is Cleveland thinking? We're trying to get the ball back here. 2nd and 15 from your own 6. Any sort of pass play is probably going to take your offense into the end zone, your offensive line into the end zone, certainly. So what do you do in that situation? You risk an incompletion. You risk a holding penalty. You risk a strip sack. There's a lot of items of risk that you're putting on the table, not to mention going up against Myles Garrett, who's already wrecked the game once at that point of the game. And on a 2nd and 15 from your own 6-yard line, Shane Steichen decides to play the game of risk. And I think one of the biggest issues that I had here, Eddie, with this is at that point, you had really, I would say, controlled large portions of the game. You look like the offense that had more potency than Cleveland's offense. And you also get the ball to start the third quarter. So I think when you view all of those things, you have got to look at yourself and say, hey, right here, right now, this is not the time to play with fire. This is not the time to try and get points. This is the time to swallow your pride a little bit, milk the clock as best you can, force them to burn timeouts, however you want to view it, and live to see another possession. What do? They dial up a pass play. Drew Ogletree and Blake Freeland do not execute a chip / whatever you want to call it on Myles Garrett. Gardner Minshew obviously has no recognition on Garrett, and boom, it's a strip sack in the end zone. They recover the fumble. There's 7 points. On the very next drive, you get into a 3rd and 13. So now the score is Cleveland leads 24-21. It is a 3rd and 13 with 1:26 on the clock. Cleveland has just burned their last timeout. So if you, 86 seconds to go as we do our math here. 86 seconds left in the half. If you run a play plus a punt, let's call the play, whatever that would have been, a 5-second play. Let's say the punt is 5 seconds. We'll say it's a quick punt. There's 10 plus 40 for the play clock, 50 seconds So if you go from 86 seconds left in the first half, take 50 off of it, you give the Browns 36 seconds to go in the half from whatever, their own 30, their own whatever yard line you want to end up calling it. In that situation, I would think Cleveland might actually kneel it. But there's a chance they probably do the, hey, let's see if we can do one play here and see what happens.
Right.
You get tackled in bounds, and boom, that's theoretically going to end the first half. What does Shane Steichen do? On 3rd and 13, he calls a screen. Obviously, it's a screen. You feel like that's a pretty high percentage play. Earlier, the Colts had, lost 6 yards on a screen, I believe, to Mo Alley Cox.
That's one of the plays I did not like.
Not a great celebration for National Tight End Day by the Colts, by the way, although Jack Doyle on the anvil was outstanding.
He looked good.
He was raising the roof, which I love the throwback to the raise of the roof there. I mean, best case scenario, Eddie, on that play, you get a screen and it goes for, 7 yards? And you're still punting it. It's not like this is a second down where, okay, let's see what happens here. And maybe, you get into a 3rd and manageable and you go for it there. Gardner Minshew has to clock the ball there or ground it. That causes a stoppage. You then gift Cleveland 40 seconds. They get into field goal range. And when did they spike that ball field goal range? Like 10 seconds left in the first half? I mean,
9.
9?
Yeah.
They needed all of that time. And that was just to get to 54 yards for Hopkins. It's not like they got to 34-yard field goal range for Dustin Hopkins. They needed all that time that they ended up having. And this sequence, Eddie, 3 points here, 7 points on the Garrett strip sack, that to me is inexcusable game management. And I want to make this very clear. I think Shane Steichen has been very good for the Colts through the first 6 games. Very good. In particular, I think his game management. I don't think he's been in many of these situations, but I think overall, he's really managed the entire operation, which he has a lot on his plate. We see it. I mean, hell, Frank Reich just gave up play calling duties. We see guys give this up. I thought he's handled it pretty darn well. This one on Sunday, though, awful. If this was the end of the game and it was Frank Reich, people would be rioting right now in describing him. But because it's Shane Steichen and there's a little bit of he can do no wrong, we choose to want to ignore it. I'm not going to ignore it in reacting after the game. To me, it was a huge sequence. It cost the Colts, in my opinion, 10 points. You could maybe nitpick and say it only cost them 3. And I know people say, Gardner's got to be better and all of that. You can certainly say your players need to be better in that situation, but you put them into riskier situations. You said to your backup quarterback, you said to Drew Ogletree, who's played 6 games in his career, Blake Freeland's played, 3 games in his career. You said to those guys, hey, backed up, exposed, I'm going to need you to do something out of character. And when you do that, you run risk. And in that moment, I didn't think you needed to play the risk game. You were leading before the Garrett strip sack. That was 21-17 at that point. You got the ball to start the third quarter. You were the offense that was proving to be more moving it up and down the field. I saw no need for either of those decisions at all, and I thought it was really costly.
So did you just loop in the game management and the Myles Garrett playing all in one there?
Well, yeah. I mean, Garrett was... Now, before we get to Garrett, because I guess this goes hand in hand,
Freak of nature.
You had more of an issue for the field goal call?
I didn't have an issue with the field goal call. I had an issue with the third down call.
Okay, so I had just gotten a holding penalty, is that right?
Was it holding or was it illegal motion or illegal shift or illegal formation? It was one of the two. I think it was holding.
A lot of penalties yesterday.
Yeah.
Colts have actually been kind of a high penalty team this season.
Yeah, tied for 7th is what I heard.
Right. I'm pulling it up right now. God, I can't believe Garrett made that play.
That was so unreal. I was there watching the game, and I was like, no way he just did that.
It was a 3rd and 3. Will Fry's 10-yard penalty for holding. So it became a 3rd and 13. Mo Alley Cox screen loses 6 yards.
Okay, yeah. So I did not like the screen call to Mo Alley Cox. I'm fine with it if it's to anyone other than Mo, just because he's just so clunky as a runner, and nothing says tight end screen more than Mo Alley Cox, who had been pretty much used as an inline blocker, going out into the flat for a screen.
Yeah, clunky as a runner is a good way to describe it. He really needs to get downhill to kind of get going there.
Yeah, so I would have rather have seen like a Pittman screen, because at that time he had no receptions in the first half.
I think it was a fake screen or a double screen, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. I think it was a fake screen to the right with Taylor, and they came back left to Mo. I think that's what was, but I didn't like that third down call. I did not like the utilization of the backs in the second half. After that drive where Taylor has 7 touches for 50 yards and a touchdown, you go right back to Zach Moss. And after that, Moss had, I'm pulling it up here, he had 8 attempts for 9 yards in total in the second half. Taylor had 10 for 32 on the ground, but Moss had 3 carries for 3 yards after that. And Taylor, or 5 carries for 5 yards. Taylor had 3 for nothing. But those 3 Taylor carries came 2 series after he had just had the 7 for 50. To me, Taylor got hot, and you got to ride the hot hand there. I didn't like him going back to Zach Moss right after that.
It's interesting. I really hadn't looked at that from that angle. For the game, Taylor outsnapped Moss by 10, had 21 touches for 120 yards. Moss, 19 touches for 62. I did think Taylor looked very, very close to his old self. You got to be highly encouraged.
By the way, I'm seeing 35-35 for both.
On snaps?
Yes.
For some reason, I saw 45 for Taylor on that side of it. What else did I not like, Eddie, from yesterday?
The Myles Garrett plan.
Yeah. He's a freak. He's an absolute freak. It's probably a little overly critical, but I feel like you get into these you get into these Garrett situations, Eddie, and there's an element of just at all cost, we are taking that guy away. I mean, yesterday was, a lot of people say, well, that was just Myles Garrett being Myles Garrett. Eddie, the media is asking Myles Garrett afterwards, was that one of the best games of your career? Was that the best game of your career? And Myles Garrett's like, not sure. So Myles Garrett clearly thought that was one of the best games of his career. It's not like these guys are having average games against the Colts. Like they are having, that was a first ballot Canton, that is on your highlight reel type of game.
I mean, he gave Cleveland 10 points.
Oh, I would argue more.
I mean, just off the top of my head, between the strip sack fumble and the block field goal.
So the first strip sack led to 7. So there's 7.
Yep.
The second strip sack directly led to 7.
So yeah, 17.
So there's 14. And then I think you could argue 17 Browns points, but he also took 3 away from the Colts. Yeah. He blocked the 60-yarder.
So
20 points.
Yeah.
By one dude.
Yeah.
So I just think, and I know there are ramifications from saying we are double teaming him on every single snap. Like Drew Ogletree, when you chip on the strip sack, you can't even chip. You've got to stay in. That's part of the risk that you run there. But Eddie, if those plays, if the Myles Garrett plays, if they just end in sacks, it's probably premature to say that you win the game, but your likelihood of winning that game go way up. Just from simply punting the ball, living with kicking it. So yeah, that is the game wrecker. And I feel like too many times the Colts allow the opposing team's best player to have one of, if not their best game of the season. I've always felt that way about kind of Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is going to kind of do him, for lack of a better phrase, but against a good run defense team in the Colts, Derrick Henry, I think it's like the second or third highest yards per carry of any opponent in his history in the NFL. Again, any opponent. The Colts are a good run defense team. Why are the Colts not stopping him and being more of a kind of an average output against the Colts? So, yeah, I thought Garrett completely wrecked it. Just completely wrecked it.
There were times when I was watching that, I'm like, okay, we've got, or the Colts have Mo Alley lined up off to the right side of the line of scrimmage. That's where he was primarily in the second half. In the first half, he lined up more on Bernard Ryman, and he got absolutely worked on that one sack that led to the first touchdown that you were talking about. But there was no chipping. I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and
what is going on? Why are you not chipping the best or second best, depending on where you rank him with TJ Watt?
And Eddie, honestly, there were times where I just looked down and thought, thank the Lord Anthony Richardson isn't playing.
Right?
I mean, seriously. I mean, it was those type of hits, obviously coming from a dude in Myles Garrett, who's much bigger than any of the guys that has hit Anthony Richardson and causing those injuries earlier. All right, does that cover everything I did not like?
Correct, yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, you teased it up when you were talking about Shane's game management. You really liked the Shane Steichen offense yesterday.
The other hat, Eddie, brilliant. 456 yards, 38 points. I mean, those are dream numbers at all. Most yards the Browns have allowed this season. Most passing yards they've allowed this season. Most rushing yards they've allowed this season. You know, you hit on a couple big plays. I thought they used arguably their most pre-snap motion of the year, and I look at that as kind of, okay, how do you create another advantage when probably personnel-wise you have a disadvantage in this game? Use some tempo. Taylor was really, really good. I thought Gardner, Eddie, it's a shame he had the turnovers because those obviously stick out. I thought he had a lot of good moments, though, and I don't think you can totally ignore that. I thought it was probably the best day collectively your wideouts gave you. I know Michael Pittman wasn't too happy about his lack of targets after the game. I'm a little head scratchy at that comment by Pittman. You scored 38 points, man. Devontae Adams went on a little rant last week. I thought Devontae Adams made tons of sense in that rant. When your offense is playing poorly and your wideouts are not being targeted, okay, that's when you speak up. When you score 38 points, don't know if that's the time to speak up. A little out of character from Michael Pittman there. Anything else offensively, Eddie? I just think Shane deserves a lot of credit. And that's the difficulty in kind of evaluating him just in regards to yesterday, because you do wear two different hats that they do overlap as play caller and game manager, but they're different. And this gets back to what I didn't like about Shane, Eddie, is as a play caller, you're thinking score, move the ball.
Yeah.
That person that's in your ear that says, hey, man, let's be cognizant of time here. We get the ball to start the third quarter. That's usually Shane. That's usually the head coach, I should say. Like in Baltimore, that's John Harbaugh on the headset to Todd Monken saying, hey, Todd, I know it's a 3rd and 7 here. I know you probably want to do something down the field, but run a high percentage clock eating play here.
Yeah.
Something like that to try and say, let's look at the big picture. I thought yesterday, for the first time all year, I thought that Shane struggled in that area. Again, I don't have too much of an issue with the 60-yard field goal. I think Matt Gay's proven to make that. To me, it was more of that sequence there, late first half. I still think Colts fans should exit Sunday highly encouraged by Shane Steichen. I want to make that very clear. I can have an issue with what he did in the moment yesterday, late first half, and also sit here on a Monday morning and think that's not going to be the norm. I don't think that's going to be the norm. So I want to make that very clear as well. But in the specific game flow of yesterday, that was really bad. And also at the same time, I can sit here and say, man, offensively, to produce that sort of game plan, outstanding. And this is just part of the difficult nature that Shane has taken on in wearing multiple hats. It's that there's a lot on his plate, and at times it's going to be complicated. At times there's going to be gray area with it. And that's the life that he's chosen as an NFL head coach and play caller. But yesterday, really, really good offensively.
I know in losses it's hard sometimes to focus or remember players that had good games because we just nitpick the things that caused the team to lose and not acknowledge the players that played well that give them a shot to win. One offensive and one defensive player. Josh Downs, 5 for 125 and a touchdown. They've got to find ways to get him involved consistently within the offense because anytime he catches the ball, it seems like there's a first down or he's making something happen. Defensively, I know a lot of praise has gone to Zaire Franklin this season, and a lot of focus has been on Shaq and whether or not he's been returning to form or not. But I think Kenny Moore II has had a really solid year. Yesterday, 10 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss. I thought he was just excellent on the field yesterday.
And man, isn't he needed right now, just with everything that's going on corner-wise and just the lack of playmaking you're getting from your linebackers and the sense of turnovers. It's funny, I almost sit here right now, Eddie, and if you were like, all right, pick a Colts player that you expect to make a game-changing play defensively. Honestly, Kenny Moore and E.J. Speed would be the first 2 names out of my mouth.
I would even toss, especially the last couple of weeks, I would toss Julian Blackmon's name in there. He's been around the ball a lot more lately.
Yeah, Blackmon obviously had the big pick yesterday. And
almost had a second one. That would have been ridiculous.
Yeah, That one-hander would have been absolutely incredible. Kenny, very good in a contract year as well. So credit to Kenny. How would you respond after last season? Admittedly very, very poor, but he has done a really nice job.
Jonathan Taylor, what did you think of his
Yeah, I thought he looked
game?
pretty close to his old self, man. And both the pass game and the run game. That catch he had on the little wheel route early in the game, great throw by Minshew, but that's a play you're going to get hit on, and he got hit on, and he hung in there, made the catch, a couple of big plays, a 24-yard run. I just notice a little bit more watching the game from the view that we have in the press box, which is the ultimate all 22 view of it. You're so high up there. Mm-hmm. There were a couple holes with Moss. I was like, man, those holes are huge, and they closed real quick. So I do think you need to continue to increase that play time for Taylor as you kind of get deeper and deeper into it. But 3 games into it, Eddie, to say that you feel like he is kind of back to his normal self. Again, I think you got to be pretty encouraged by that.
All right, so here are the numbers I was talking about earlier. After that 50-yard touchdown drive by Taylor, Moss had 6 attempts for 7 yards. Taylor 3 attempts, 0 yards, and a reception for 6 yards. But that came on third down and 19 or something. Third down and 15. It was third and long, but I just felt like going away from Taylor in that situation was not the right thing to do with the way the offense was moving through him on that one drive.
Did we have anything Grover Stewart related in Twitter questions? Do you recall?
I do not recall.
Okay. I will try to sneak that in at some point. We have anything else on what I liked?
No. You ready for Twitter questions?
Yes.
Cameron and Scotty, is there any structure in place for officials to be punished for horrible calls that swing games? Obviously, they don't get fined. Baseball, at least, has a grading system. Is there any sort of review? Really sucks when the refs decide football games.
Yeah, obviously a lot of questions about this from yesterday. Several people chiming in. I don't know that. To be totally fair, again, I haven't really looked into it. And I think the NFL, you just get exposed a little bit more in this because you have review, you have replay that is now in incredible high def and slowed down to the millisecond. And when your games, there's so many games, Eddie, that come down to the wire, you're going to have these moments. Again, I have never been a big refs cost us, and I tend to think I'm that way with Notre Dame as well. That's not just me speaking from someone that's a little bit numb to it. I think my fandom indicates that. But I get the raw fan emotion. I mean, I certainly get it. So, yeah, I don't have a great answer for that, but it doesn't seem like there is an actual, grading punishment scale. I don't know, maybe it impacts, how deep you can go into the playoffs. Again, there was an Indy native on the officiating crew yesterday, so, clearly he wasn't supporting the hometown team if you want to go there.
Jay's Twitter question is up next. What do you think of Shane Steichen, or what do you think Shane Steichen was thinking with less than 2 minutes to go in the first half, throwing out of your own end zone when you're leading by 4? Why would you not just hand the ball off and get to the half up 4 points? Does he really have that much faith in Gardner Minshew? If so, I think that's negligent. His game management screams first-time head coach. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, Jay, I really don't know. To be fair, I don't really even care about the score too much in that instance, but I think you do, or I think you should care about the score in that instance. And my thoughts are just weather the storm. You get the ball start the third quarter. To me, it was a little bit of blind faith, Eddie. It was blind faith, and I think you got to live in reality of the backup you have in the game, the rookie right tackle you have in there, and Myles Garrett's already done it once to you. I mean, it shouldn't take that, but he's already done it once to you. So I mean, what was the thought process there? Was the thought process you were going to score from 2nd and 15 on your own 6-yard line? The minute 50 to go in the first half? To me, that's not living in reality when you're facing that sort of defense and you have, your backup quarterback in that game. So, sometimes as a coach and as a play caller, your job is to protect your players from themselves. Mm-hmm. And I thought you exposed them, if anything.
Something that's a little nuanced on my part that I was thinking about, the Colts won the toss. They elected to defer. To me, I feel like if you're going up against a better team, so let's say, in a few weeks when they play the Cincinnati Bengals on the road, I think, in my opinion, if you win the toss, you have to receive because you can't afford to let Gardner Minshew play from behind because that does not play into the style of offense that best fits Gardner Minshew. Just because we saw it again yesterday. He's now 1-10 when he throws a turnover, and the only win that he has, ironically, is against the Colts when he was with Jacksonville.
Yeah. And yesterday, again, there are a lot of positives from Gardner, but from a turnover nature, it probably deserves to be a little bit more of what I didn't like of just the amount of turnovers. When the strip sacks occur, Eddie, I always feel like, it shows up as a quarterback turnover. To me, there's also an element of like your offensive line can't get beat in those situations. It's probably a combination of things. Gardner's awareness in the pocket, I think, has been something that I've been a little bit head-scratching with this season. And honestly, fumbles are a little bit more indicative of his career. Interceptions, not necessarily. Fumbles have been there, though, with that. So certainly, he's got to protect the ball better, but I don't think it's just a black and white day with Minshew either. He still is a guy that completed 15 passes and threw for over 300 yards. And certainly, Michael Pittman's catch and run helps him out, but let's give him credit for the Pittman play. He throws that ball on target and in stride. What does that allow Michael Pittman to do? Not break stride and be kind of a battering ram in the middle of that field with, Browns defenders bouncing off him as he, ran 75 yards for the touchdown. By the way, I have no idea why Michael Pittman was flagged for that. Unsportsmanlike conduct? No idea.
He threw out the peace sign.
And that's not allowed?
No, because remember Tyreek would do it, and then
does he get flagged for it?
Well, Tyreek doesn't do it anymore. Now he just goes up, grabs fans' phones, and does backflips, or goes into the stands and celebrates with them.
God, I'm watching this Myles Garrett play again. It is absurd.
Which one?
Exactly. The jump over the line. Like, he is in his stance. It's not like, sometimes you see like DBs, get a running start. This man is in his stance, takes a half step to the right, and almost catches Matt Gay's field goal. What a freak. Absolute freak.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. I'm glad Bailey asked this question because it's something we haven't addressed yet. I'm sure it's been stated a lot now, but how big of a blow do you think Juju Brents going out was? I hated to see him go out, especially the way it happened. You could see his frustration.
Yeah, and I got a text here. I haven't been able to confirm this, but I'll just relay this, that they're thinking he could be out several weeks if it can heal on its own. If not, then season-ending surgery, which, is unfortunately something that we've heard before from a Colts rookie this season. A huge deal. But it's a big blow. And, Eddie, it's a big blow in the short term and the long term. The short term of yesterday, it throws Darrell Baker into the fire and, throws him back into that situation. And I think what we've seen so far is, the moment could be a little bit too big for him. And this is a time, Eddie, too, where it's like, and I know injuries have played into this. Obviously, the Dallas Flowers injury and now theoretically the Juju Brents injury. But, the Darrell Baker benching in week 2 kind of started all of this. This is where you'd love to still have kind of a Darius Rush in there, of a guy that, to me, you did not need to expose on the waiver wire when you did. And now, he's I think it's Pittsburgh now he's with. And to me, you had some room at the cornerback position to still retain. The Colts have kind of churned the back end of their cornerback room. They claimed a dude from the Patriots off waivers late last week, so we'll see what they think about him. If he can get up to speed, he was a 6th-round pick of the Patriots last year, a big dude. I forget, Amir something or other. But yeah, I thought the Brent's injury was big. And I guess here, Eddie's where I'll throw in a little bit of Grover Stewart. Obviously, you felt him on the third play of the game.
Mm-hmm.
You go back and watch the 3rd and 2 run by the Browns. Both their guards sealed Taven Bryan and DeForest Buckner. And I think we all agree Buckner is more of a pass guy than a run guy. Still is effective against the run. But obviously, Cleveland said, I think we can handle that. What does that do? It allows their center to get to the second level. And who does their center get? He gets Zaire Franklin on that play. And now all of a sudden, Jerome Ford, Eddie, he scores that if it's two-hand touch. 3rd and 2, 69 yards up the middle?
Mm-hmm.
How often do you see that?
Yeah.
It was... that was...
And then Shaq was just standing there like, oh, bleep, he's coming.
Shaq gets a late start, and it doesn't look good. Jalen Jones, I thought, could have given you better effort from that corner, kind of pinching down there, especially in a short yardage play when you think run.
Yeah.
Could be an option there. For what it's worth, Eddie, Taven Bryan, 19 snaps, 0 tackles. I thought at times he was getting absolutely blown off the ball. He got the start for Grover. Eric Johnson, the second, the 5th-round pick from 2 years ago. He played 31 snaps.
He had a pass deflection there, too, in the fourth quarter, right?
He had a half tackle. Did he have a pass deflection?
Or was that Buckner? Oh, yeah, that's Buckner, yeah.
And then he got hurt late, and it did not look good late. And honestly, that's probably the one that I think you'd want, if you're going to pick the two moving forward. I think Johnson, short-term and long-term, he's probably a little bit more of a nose type of guy, or maybe a little bit better against the run. So, yeah, you're in full scramble mode right now with where you're at defensive tackle. I mean, certainly the Browns' rushing offense wasn't as potent throughout the day.
Yeah.
But the 69-yarder and the 4th and 1 to end the game, I mean, that's where you're going to feel Grover. It doesn't have to just be the yards per carry at the end of the game. If that 69-yarder, if Grover makes Jerome Ford go through a different hole and it's a 4-yard gain, is Cleveland driving the length of the field to Deshaun Watson early in the game?
I don't think so.
And obviously the 4th and 1, that one as well.
A little bit of Pacers news right here in the middle. Twitter questions. Aaron Nesmith gets a contract extension. Tony East of Forbes and Locked On Pacers saying 3 years and can earn up to $38.6 million.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for Aaron Nesmith.
Good for Tony. Oh, sorry.
That as well. Tony's outstanding at that. I like his game. And I feel like he had a nice season with the Pacers and almost kind of a forgotten guy.
Yeah. Brings a little bit of toughness that they need on the defensive end, that's for sure. Back to the Colts game. Jake was talking about the Jerome Ford play. He goes, while the first play getting gashed by Ford hurt, take away the 69-yard touchdown run, and the defense held them to 81 yards on 32 carries. That is 2.5 yards per carry. Colts offense put up over 450 yards of offense despite 4 turnovers. Refs absolutely screwed the Colts over to gift us the L. I want us to get a high draft pick for the sake of Anthony Richardson. So the loss is good in that sense, but I can't reconcile with the loss in that fashion. What are the Colts fans going to make of this bummer of a season? Thank you and love the pod. P.S. FYI, the Easter eggs and the Christmas tree Reese's cups had the best chocolate to peanut butter ratio for Eddie's sake.
You know what we have done here in the Bowen household?
And I'm glad there's somebody out there that has done it looks like a case study on where the best peanut butter to chocolate ratio is when it comes to the Reese's.
That is outstanding. I'd love to be the person doing the case study on that. I bought Halloween candy a few weeks ago.
Are you out already?
In the back of my head, I'm like, this just means we can eat it all before Halloween.
Yeah.
Smart. Dumb. Oldest trick in the book.
By the way, what are the kids dressing up as Halloween before?
Rose is going to be a Barbie and Max is going to be a dinosaur.
Nice.
Early Halloween weather. Nothing says you're a parent like you look ahead to Halloween weather. It looks awful.
Are you and Maddie dressing up?
I will be a piece of bacon for the umpteenth year in a row. Kevin Bacon, if you will. And I will see what... I'm not sure what Maddie's going to be, actually. She has. One year we were eggs and bacon.
Oh, nice.
Actually, Rosie was the egg. Maddie was toast, now that I think about it there. But yeah.
Anyway, Jake's question is how...
Boy, Jake covers a lot.
Yeah.
And... I think it's a lot of fan frustration. And, we had a caller today, Eddie, on our morning show that did the entertaining loss comment.
Yep.
I think in the raw emotion of a Monday morning radio show at 8:30, I would argue, 8% of your audience wants to hear the phrase entertaining loss at that point? Now, maybe if we remove ourselves and we get to the end of the year, you're going to look back at that Browns game and say, oh, wow, are you drafting 3 spots ahead of... Because, when I get to the draft, Eddie, I want to be the one making the choice. I don't want other teams having to dictate what's on the board for me. That's why I was such an advocate of trading up back in last year's draft of, I want to be the one that can pick between Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
I don't want to have Anthony Richardson just left in my lap for me.
By the way, Marvin Harrison Jr., another... excellent game, by the way, against top competition, so yeah.
So let's play that out. Marvin Harrison goes 2. Obviously, the Colts, you would assume, are going to win too many games to be drafting that high and aren't probably going to trade up. But I want to pick the second wideout then, or I want to pick the best pass rusher available. I don't want to be in a situation where other teams are kind of dictating what the board looks like for you. There are all different types of fans, Eddie. And this is, I feel like I always get on like my fan philosophical thoughts, but like you make of the season what you want to make of it. So far, I think this is a team that's played better than I thought, even though I'm one that had them. I would assume I had them at 3 wins at this point of the year. I don't know. I had them 7 wins for the season. I would guess right around 3 wins at this point. And I think you can exit it right now thinking, after 7 weeks, if you're going to give a mid-season report card, like there have been a lot of encouraging signs out of this year, and that's putting just all the Richardson stuff to the side. And we will get into all of the analyzation of it at the end of the year. And, is Bernard Ryman definitely the guy? Is Kwity Paye definitely the guy? What does the future hold for Shaq Leonard? What should Michael Pittman's contract situation look like? All those storylines we will unpack. I think arguably the most encouraging sign so far is probably Shane Steichen. I would go there first. If you want to look at a very kind of positive element. And again, this comes after me saying that I thought he was extremely costly yesterday late in the first half. But all in all, I think you should be very happy that he's your head coach.
I am as well, for sure. 4 Twitter questions left, so we're halfway through. Rodney, first off, love the pod, and I never miss it. Love your guys' level-headed perspective, especially in times like these. The question is multifaceted in this sense, that it's clear that the Colts struggle to shut the door late with a lead and have for years, as it's clear we don't have a game wrecker on the roster currently, i.e., Myles Garrett. Whatever draft capital is available, knowing that the Colts need to find some groceries to stock the cabinet for next year for Anthony Richardson, but shouldn't goal number 1 be to absolutely 100% fund a dominant pass rusher either in the draft, trade, or free agency? Kwity ain't it, Sampson ain't it, Dio ain't it. They are good complementary pieces, but they are not alphas.
I want to get to Roddy in just a second, but he brings up the D-line. I did have a few questions about the Myles Garrett play, Eddie, and why that wasn't a penalty.
Which one?
The field goal leap. He's got to make contact.
Correct.
And so I think some credit to Bubba Ventrone in all seriousness there. Myles Garrett said after the game that's a play that they have in but don't have it in every week. And so clearly Bubba had seen something in the Colts blocking that I forget who exactly is lined up there. Maybe it was Taven Bryan.
I think it is because he had the penalty on the PAT, and yeah. I was trying to figure out where he was because illegal formation. I was like, he's lined up, right guard or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Will Fries in his normal right guard spot. I think Taven Bryan could have been in there, but basically, those guys are going to block down and not raise up in that situation. Which it makes sense. You obviously want to try and lower the line of scrimmage so the block doesn't occur there. Obviously,
especially with the longer field goal, you're probably going to kick it lower,
a little bit lower, certainly from 60 yards. So the Browns, felt like that was a possibility, and then Myles Garrett's a one-of-one freak in the NFL. I think Rodney points out a very accurate point about the rushers. Good complementary pieces, but not alphas. When's the last time the Colts have had an alpha pass rusher?
Robert Mathis?
It was a decade ago, right? Led the league in sacks in 2013.
Oh, my. It's been that long? Feels like yesterday.
Houston has crept into a 10-sack season. Eric Walden's crept into a 10-sack season. Buckner's been right there. I'm trying to think of some of the other, Ngakoue, I guess, was very close to that, especially had he not gotten hurt. I think the wideout pass rusher debate is a lot closer than people think, Eddie. And I'm probably a lean towards wideout guy because of the Richardson development. But if we get to April and you're going to show me that there's more depth in the wideout draft class than the edge rush draft class, that's where you could very well fall into the trap of edge rush round 1, wideout round 2. Sort of positional mock draft that we can all get into there.
Brian.
But overall, to Rodney's point, I think a dominant passer. I probably am a little bit more wideout because it's Richardson. Having said that, I think it's a much closer debate than a lot of people look at right now.
Brian thought it was a good game yesterday from the Colts. It was exciting, and it kept him interested throughout. The result was great, too. This will not be a very popular view, but it is for the best interest of the team. Darrell Baker Jr. needs to play more. The only way coaches can be evaluated is by the back end of the roster playing. Let's see if they improve. The season is a punt, and they need the high draft pick. We know what we have in running backs. Let the younger players play and see what they have. No reason to risk injury to a player we need next year. Ballard will get a pass, so let the good players get a pass too. Sit them.
Entertaining loss, crowd. Here we go. Again, after this week, I don't think anyone necessarily wants to hear that. And maybe there is a little bit more of a crowd than not that I am acknowledging. But, I mean, for this past Sunday, Eddie, that was such a big game wild card standing-wise. You know, you fell from 8th to 11th. Cleveland was at 7th, clinging to that final wild card spot. And it's an AFC loss. It's a head-to-head loss with Cleveland. That's where, you know, there's just that extra sting to it all. And, you know, probably to add to it, you know, it comes when Jacksonville wins on Thursday Night Football. And, you know, I guess Houston's got a bye week if you want to look at it like that. But, I mean, they are, I don't, outside of Nick Cross, and by the way, Eddie, 2 snaps for Nick Cross on Sunday. So the increase in play time, if there was any sort of objective there, not much came to fruition there. You know, outside of Nick Cross, I don't know if I look on this roster and think, you know, the Colts are stunting player A's growth by not playing him. I don't, maybe I'm missing somebody, but I don't feel like there was like an abundance of guys that fall into that boat. Cross would probably be the biggest one, easily the biggest one.
Yeah. I'd like to see a little bit more Will Mallory, too. I know he got some
Mallory
run yesterday.
He actually had a target, but yeah.
You dropped it, too.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, he definitely got his hands on it. I didn't think it was a great throw, but yeah, that was a drop.
Chris is up next. When will this team learn how to close games out? Yes, the Revs made some bad calls, but that wouldn't have mattered if they just put the clamps down to stop a team.
You know, when Buckner knocked down that ball to start the drive, I thought Leonard was picking it off. It looked like Philip Walker was looking for Njoku over the middle, and it looked like Leonard was in that area. I don't know, maybe. Who knows, knowing Philip Walker, the ball could have been thrown into section 432. You know, obviously EJ Speed had that moment, Eddie, and it was negated by the penalty. I mean, EJ Speed, to me, he's the guy that makes the most of those plays. If you looked at a per-snap basis, EJ Speed makes those plays. And right now, Leonard is not. 7 straight games, again, without an interception, without a forced fumble, without a fumble recovery. I believe the longest stretch of his career, Eddie, before this one was 5 games without those 3. And then I'll go back to Kwity Paye. You know, we'll probably do more of a midseason report when the bye week gets here, albeit it'll be a little bit past the midseason report at that point, Eddie. But right now, you know, we had on our storyline list at the start of the year, Ryman at left tackle, Paye at end. Who do you feel better about? Or do you feel great about both? Right now, I think I still feel pretty good about Ryman. I know, obviously, the last 2 weeks, Josh Allen and Myles Garrett have made some big plays against him, but I think I still feel good about him. Paye's the one that I am in question on. And this is the pseudo contract here. Eddie, right now, are you picking up Kwity Paye's 5th-year option?
Boy, as of right now, probably not. He's had more games where he's not been there than games that he has been there.
Yeah, I think I'm a probably not. But again, it's obviously a debate. He's got, 10 more games the rest of the season to see how it plays out. But that's obviously a big storyline left going from there. Again, closing, just the ability to close, to me, that so often comes from a dominant defensive line. And I don't think the Colts have that when it comes to pass rushing situations.
I thought he had a couple good plays in the run game.
Yeah, I mean, he had a decent tackle number, right? Was it
5?
Yeah, 5. I mean, that's a pretty good number for a defensive end. But to me, I would sacrifice that if you could get a little third down pop going.
Flippin' is our last question for today's pod in the Twitter section category. Kevin, what are your thoughts about changing punt returners? Isaiah McKenzie is a liability, and it's going to bite the Colts. Is Josh Downs an option? Thank you.
Yeah, Downs is the other guy I see go back there. Then they cut Amari Rodgers over the weekend. I think to make room for the DB that they claim. So
didn't Downs say something in the preseason when they asked him about it? He goes, "Yeah, I didn't even do it in high school," or something like that about fielding punts, or maybe he hasn't done it since high school.
He did it at North Carolina.
Josh did?
I'm almost positive he did it in North Carolina.
Let me look.
He certainly has done it with the Colts in practice and various special teams drills. I mean, to me, I don't know about you, but
yeah, he did in 21 and 22. Yeah.
He was a punt returner.
Yeah, then maybe it's McKenzie that I'm thinking about returning punts then.
I just feel like I'd rather just have reliable back there. I mean, I guess, if you can go get 7 yards when the moment arises for 7 yards, but just give me reliable. And Downs seems to be that guy. And it's not like, he's playing a big role offensively, Eddie, but it's not like he's playing. Alec Pierce actually outsnapped Michael Pittman yesterday. It's not like he's playing. Pierce had 70 snaps, Pittman had 68, Downs at 50. So, he's still playing a big number, but, hell yeah, Dallas Flowers on kick return. I'd throw him out there.
Yeah.
I don't know who else. Maybe there's. Could Kenny Moore do it? I don't know.
I don't
love defensive players going back there after just if they somehow had a long drive, just a little bit tired.
Yeah, I don't know if Shane Steichen was Josh Downs out there fielding punts because he is your third wide receiver, and his snap count has slowly been increasing the last couple of weeks. He played 71% of the snaps
just fair catch
yesterday.
Every one for all I care.
Right.
Nowadays, it dumbfounds me that teams bring the ball out, that teams return kicks. Maybe I'm just missing these big returns, but where are ththese returns that teams get past the 25-yard line?
Oh, last night, I think every time Braxton Berrios took it out for Miami, other than maybe one, he brought it out to the 30, 35-yard line.
I swear, when I watch the Colts, and obviously I live in a very Colts bubble, I do not see either the Colts or their opponents get past the 25-yard line often at all.
I think that's a large part of the coverage.
1 out of 5 kicks. Right, so it's just fair catch it like no other.
By the way, Shaq played 72% of the defensive snaps yesterday, in total of 54. EJ Speed only 30 snaps, so 40%.
You got to get that Speed playing time up. He's impactful, man. And I'm sure there's probably a little bit of crazy with him. He commits some penalties, and it might not be the most perfect, but for a defense that needs more playmaking out of their front seven, to me, EJ Speed's got to be on the field more. And you know what? Do you fall into a Jacksonville trap, Eddie, with how your cornerback group is right now? Is it really worth bringing Darrell Baker on the field as your third corner?
Right.
Why not play some more base?
Yeah.
Are we going to overreact to what the Cleveland passing game is or the New Orleans passing? Did you watch Derek Carr last Thursday night?
I did.
Ugly.
Yeah. And he's got weapons.
Yeah, actually he does. All right, he's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Pacers open up on Wednesday night. Looking forward to their season getting underway. We'll be back Wednesday afternoon with the Reactionary Pod. Update on Juju Brents there. See if there's confirmation on how long he's going to be out and whatever other news items inevitably arises with this Colts team. 107.5 The Fan is all your coverage, Colts-wise. Thanks, people, for listening. Love you.